to Sankofa Video Books and Cafe. I'm Christina Joy, the events coordinator, and we are here tonight, July 18th, 2023, for an event you won't forget. Tonight we have Ron Moten, the infamous Ron Moten, co-founder of Don't Mute DC, and overall just Dope Brother in general, the author of Don't Mute Moe. And tonight interviewing Ron will be Geneva Green. She is a PhD candidate at the illustrious Howard University, HU. You know. And in communications, culture, and media. And she's also an archivist as well. And without further ado, let me have Geneva introduce Ron and herself.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Sankofa team, for inviting us and having us today. I'm really looking forward to the conversation with Mo and just digging into the book and having more conversation about that. So just a little bit about me, just to follow up on what Christina said. I am a current PhD student at Howard University in communications, culture, and media studies. My research focus is on the intersection of art and liberation and activism. And so as part of that research and part of that study, I'm part of the National Folklife Network, which is funded by the National Endowment of the Arts. And through that work, I had the pleasure of also joining Mr. Moten on that team and collaborating also on efforts for Don't Mute DC, of which he is a co-founder. So I'll tell you a little bit about our author that we're speaking with today. So Ronald Moten is has more than 20 years. Okay. Thanks. So Ronald Moten has more than 20 years of advocating for equity, peace, education, and resources for the DC community. He is a DC native. And most recently, he received the Greater Washington, DC Black Chamber of Commerce Social Impact Award and the Lifetime Achievement Award from President Joe Biden. So give him a round of applause for that. I'm so glad that his efforts have been recognized, and they meant so much to the community. And I learned a little from Mo and in our work together, but through this book I've learned so much more, and I think this book is so rich and has so many gems. So I'm excited to talk about that today. And so let's jump right in. First I wanted to talk about community empowerment. And so in chapter 6, Mo actually talks about giving out turkeys versus empowering the people. So Mo, what are ways to empower the community that you think work? Talk about some of the things you're doing as co-founder of the Go-Go Museum.
So when I wrote that article, it was a rainy day and close to Thanksgiving. And I saw all these black people lining up in line to get turkeys from a church. And it just struck me the wrong way because, a lot of people, developers and other people, they give money to give away turkeys to people for one-day gratification versus giving people what they need to build equity, to build, real wealth. Like we criminalize wealth and we embrace poverty, or giving people just enough to say you're doing something for them. So, a lot of people do press conferences on, hey, we gave away 2,000 turkeys. So I'm like, what the hell is a turkey going to do to help my people? You know what I'm saying? Even the symbol, what it's all about, is a problem. But, so it really, just struck me that they decided to wrote it out there. And that's what I would do a lot of times when things come across my mind. I learned how to address them. Once I wrote my first op-ed, what is snitching and what's not. And basically it was an op-ed like explaining what's citizenship and what's snitching, which is snitching is when you're in the streets and you commit a crime and then you telling somebody to get off. We know the police don't like snitching, the politicians don't like snitching, and the street don't like snitching. Nobody likes to snitch, right? But citizenship is a totally different thing. So that was my first op-ed that Natalie convinced me to write when she was the editor of the Washington Post. And from there, I just took off with writing op-eds once that got published. As far as that particular op-ed and, dealing with equity, my thing is, I was in this group called Ceasefire Don't Smoke, the Brothers and Sisters upon returning home from prison in 1994, October 1994. And that's where I grew up uptown. And when I saw how we got the building at that time, Marion Barry was the mayor. And he gave us the money to purchase the building. So I saw that firsthand. That's why experiences are so important for our people. Because you see something, then later you know it can be done. Right. You believe it. If you don't know, you never seen it, you're not going to believe it, right? So I saw that, and he gave us the money, we bought the building, and today, that's the only building on the 4700 block of 14th Street that's owned by a black person. Because Marion Barry had the vision enough to give us the money to buy the building back then. So Al Malik, who still owns the building, is the only black person that owns a property on that 100 block where I grew up as a child, right? Fast forward to check it, politicians, you always see them talk about equity and this and that. A lot of people don't know I took former gang members. It was a gay gang in Chinatown that came and asked me for their help called Check It. And initially it was about 10 of them who I started with, who were the core leaders. And I got them and I shut that gang down without any government, any support, right? Or any support from the LGBT community. And we stopped the violence, and then I took them and started the fashion. We started fashion and clothing because there's always a hook. And most people want to just come up. Most people just want to do something positive and win and be highlighted doing something positive, make money. So that's what that was about. 2 other young people stuck with it, and they owned $2 million worth of property with me in Southeast. And the reason why they owned it because what I saw on 14th Street. I knew that the government could help us buy the buildings where we were at because I seen them do it for Al Malik, and I seen them give hundreds and hundreds of properties to developers for $1, and for people who are their friends for $1, and to good people who deserve, it for $1. And sometimes you got to get property for $1 in order to make it developable. Sometimes the numbers just don't add up, but we convinced them to do it. Councilman Robert White did a bill. Kenya McDuffie helped get it through. We got all 13 votes to get $2 million to buy the properties. And now we're doing a Go-Go Music Museum there. We're doing a restaurant there. We got Radio, who's one of the renters there, will be there forever because their rent will never go up in one of the buildings that we own. The other building, Donnell Perkins, is doing a restaurant that he used to have on Sherman Avenue called Donnell's. And they moving that there. So basically, we turned that into wealth and building something that we can leave behind. And it's not a nonprofit; it's a for-profit. And when I started working with them and we started checking enterprise, I deliberately didn't do a nonprofit because I had a nonprofit before. I believe you should have both a nonprofit and a for-profit, but you can't speak your mind with a nonprofit. You can't tell government when they're wrong with a nonprofit. You can't tell politicians when they're wrong with a nonprofit. And somebody else controls you with a nonprofit. You have a board that can fire you after you build something up. So why would I build something up under a nonprofit that somebody can take away with me when I piss somebody off? Right? So teaching people about equity is getting them to understand the dynamics of all of what I just said. And empowering people to own, empowering people to start businesses, even if they fail. If they fail, they will understand what it takes to create a business and keep it going. So even if they have to go work for somebody else, they value it more. Because some people who go work for others, they don't know what it takes for a person to create a job. Right. So they don't even appreciate the fact that somebody's giving them a chance anymore. So all those things, play a part in the dynamics of equity. And a lot of people think that equity is giving us a handout. Equity is giving us bread. No, teach us how to fish. Right? If you go in communities in Washington, D.C., and you see the same thing happen. If I go in public housing, when we came up, my grandparents were in public housing, but all of them made it out of public housing. It wasn't designed at that time for our people to stay there. And they didn't have the mentality that they were going to stay there. But I'm going to have to say this, a progressive system teach us that family doesn't matter. They teach us that you can't discipline your children. They teach us that you can get something for nothing. right? So every other group that comes to America, they still have their culture, their history, and their principles of doing for self, right? We become dependent on a government who's never cared for us, right? Unless we make a lot of noise, and then you think you're gonna get what you want. So you get just enough for somebody to say they're doing something for you, while every other race comes here and makes it. They come here, ride their bicycles to work one day, you look up 2 years later, they got a car and a house, right? And we got programs right here in DC that will give you $200,000 to buy a house. And all you gotta do is get your credit score up to 600, and you think I'm gonna walk around talking about what the government not doing for me? That's because we've been taught to be entitled for people to do everything for us. And I'm not blaming my people. That's a system that counts on us to do that and teaches us to do that. That's a system that has 40% of some of the children in the Southeast not going to middle school every day. So when you look at the violence and everything in our community, and you say 40% of one particular school that's in a very, very crime-ridden neighborhood, they're not going to school. It's no mystery why you see them out here doing some of the things they do. And then they go to a household where 90-something% of the 15 and 17-year-olds live in a single-parent household, half the time with the children running the household. And you can't discipline them because we've been taught that if a child smacks a parent, they can't be disciplined. We've been taught that, not a parent, I'm sorry, a teacher, you can't even suspend a child. So we teach them that anything's acceptable. And then a lot of them not getting the love that they deserve. So they go from getting love to getting likes on social media. They live for likes instead of love. And we see a lot of things that we're seeing now.
Yeah, I mean, you said so much there. You know, disrupting the systems through education, entrepreneurship, ownership, etc., and just really building up the community. But what I love so much about your book and so much one of the things that you said is just holding everybody accountable. So in your book, you don't just talk about the government being a problem. You don't just talk about maybe police officers being a problem. You talk about everybody, even our community, not being victims. And knowing that there's something that you can get up and do as well. So everyone being held accountable. And I love that fairness and that approach that you do.
With the understanding everybody's not perfect. None of us, not even me.
Right. Yeah, nobody's perfect. So, I mean, instead of simply pointing a finger, you talk about, the group everyone plays. Can you talk more about why you take that approach and how to keep all parties accountable? How do you keep all the parties accountable?
So I studied under a lot of the civil rights. I was blessed, first, let me say that. From coming home from prison and being in rooms with Winnie Mandela, Kwame Ture, speaking at Howard University with Louis Farrakhan as a youth organizer for the Million Man March. I was just blessed to be around powerful, strong Black men and women. And one of the things that I remember that Amelia Bolton Robinson told me, a lot of y'all don't know Amelia, but she was the woman that Obama pushed across the Evans Pettus Bridge for the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And she was the mother of the Voting Rights Act. And she was beat across the head on Bloody Sunday. And that picture made it all over the country, right? All over the world. It was one of the reasons why we won. So we used to take a lot of children to work with them, Reverend James Bevel, all these people who really were the people who did a lot of work for King and even gave him the ideas. And one of the things that they taught me was when you lose your moral compass, you lose your power. I'm gonna say that again. When you lose your moral compass, you lose your power. So my thing is, a lot of times I say things that people don't like if you kill, your ass need to go to jail. Oh man, why are you talking that high shit? Because I have a moral compass. Yeah. We can't walk around in a society where people think it's all right to kill. Right? So some people think it's something wrong with that. Why you gotta say this? No, I'm going to say it. Because God blessed me with a mouth, right? And he blessed me to be here when I didn't have to be here, right? And if I don't say it, who gonna say it, right? So you have to have a moral compass to have any form of power. And a lot of times in our community, we see all the things that white people do to us, but we're afraid to talk about things that we do to each other. So then you become like the person who done all the bad things to you, you start being like them because you start losing your moral compass. And then your children see that. They see you start compromising your integrity. And then what they do is they start being like you. And then you go a couple of decades later, and we in the situation that we in because people start compromising for different issues. And I remember the civil rights movement. This is why it's so important to work with the young people because they don't have all these motives like a lot of older people. So young people work from the heart and from what they feel. And that's one of the reasons why these people gave them this music. I talk about that in the video games and all that, because throughout history, the young people were the ones that always stood up and fought the system and couldn't be directed by the streams. So they started saying, oh, we got to get it in the music. We got to put it in the video games. We got to put in everything that entertains them so we can get them off track. And that's what they've done with our young people, right? So the moral compass is just like so important, and then holding people accountable. It's just telling truth. Some people don't like the truth. Like I tell people all the time, I don't care about no parties. Everybody, oh, I'm a Democrat. I've been a Democrat and a Republican. You know, and I identify more with Republicans than Democrats because I'm a go-getter. My grandparents were go-getters. I'm just not with no racist stuff. You feel what I'm saying? And I believe that you can't go around telling people to get their bootstraps up and you ain't showing them a way to come up, right? But other than that, I don't believe in teaching people that you're supposed to be poor and you're supposed to be that, or that I can go out here and work all my life hard and somebody else decide not to work hard. You tell me what I got to do with my money. No, you don't do that. You don't have the right to tell me that, right? But as a human, even if I make money, I can't forget where I come from. Like, I'm not an Armstrong Williams. I never forget where I come from. But you don't tell me what to do with my money if I work hard every day and make the sacrifices to get where I'm at, and somebody else who had the same opportunities I had decided not to. And I think we have to teach people that there are consequences. For every action that you make, is good consequences that come from it or bad? And you got to teach people to make the right decisions. And we got to teach people when we make mistakes, when we make the bad decision, you have to use it as a lesson to move on in life. And I tell people all the time, like, a lot of people will say, okay, he or she got on drugs because their mother was on drugs. That's the exact reason why I didn't get on drugs. Because I saw what it did to my mother, my uncle, and my father. So we got to teach our young people every bad experience doesn't have to be an excuse for you to have one. It should be the blueprint for you not to follow to end up in the same situation. So we've always been a people that learn from our past. But because our history, like in the article I talk about Howard University, and how I wrote an op-ed about how, I don't know if y'all remember when they had the thing in the Yard Fest, and that year they decided to charge people to get in the Yard Fest, and the people jumping the fence over there. So that same week, Eleanor Holmes Norton is a cemetery in Woodland called the Woodlawn Cemetery. And it has all these great black people. The first black senator that served a full term. Langston Hughes' uncle, who started the law school at Howard University, was the first president of Howard. I mean, all the people started all the churches in D.C. One of the greatest black opera singers, female opera singers ever to touch the world. It's just so many great black. It was a cemetery for greatness. And my grandparents are buried. My great grandparents are buried. So we had a cleanup there that day, and I was like, what if all those people who jumped the damn fence to see some concert came over this fence and helped beautify and help us restore the cemetery and learn about all these great people and all this history that's right here in Ward 7. You feel what I'm saying? So, like, because we don't have that history and our children don't know their greatness and they don't know who they are, where they come from, and what people did with nothing, they think because they're in a bad situation that they can't do something. So when you lose hope and you have hopelessness, this is what you get. And when young people, like I tell people all the time, it's not the guns that cause the violence. You can dump 1 million guns right down that street right there. But if everybody who come across that gun out there got something to lose, You think they're gonna go shoot and kill somebody? If they got something to live for, if they got something to go happy home to every day that's happy, if they got a future, the likelihood of that person, even somebody pissed them off, to go use a gun and shoot somebody is very, very small, minimal. And that's what we got to understand.
Yeah, everything you're saying, it makes me think about the war on history in schools right now too, and why there's such a war on removing it and empowering our kids through it. But as you've been saying, the community also plays a role in that, making sure that we remember the history and value kind of teaching that and sharing those messages. And you stress that in your book too. And I mean, you ended with a message on violence and violence interruption, and you've been a violent interrupter in DC for a very long time. So I want to know many of your op-eds were written in the early 2000s, but all of it is still very relevant today. Right. So in your work, what do you think has changed regarding violence since you've been doing this work? What do you think needs to change? And what role do you think arts and music plays in that?
So first I'll say that a lot has changed, but one of the reasons why a lot of people are not effective is because they're not spiritual. When you're spiritual, you have no fear of a young person with a gun. When you're spiritual, you can look a young person in his eyes, connect with his soul. But when you're doing something just for the money, just for the moment, or some post on Instagram and say, hey, look at me, you're not going to connect. And one of the things that's changed is there are more and more disparities in the city. There are more and more single parents in the city. Social media definitely has an impact on what we have in our community. The music definitely has an impact. We went from fight for power and things like that, self-destruction, to every song talking about Percocets, every song talking about drugs, sex, and killing. So right now, the coolest guy on the block is the guy with the biggest gun. Not the smartest guy, not the guy that is going to bail us out. It's the guy that's going to destroy the community. And that was by design. So when you go to deal with a lot of the young people now, they've been taught by social media. And then the other thing that happened was a lot of our young people had skills with their hands and things, and they took the music out of the schools, they took the trades out of the schools, and all that helped destroy the black middle class. So when you destroy the black middle class, and like I was saying earlier, when you teach people that family not as important, you can't have a community without family. You can't have family without marriage. So when you go from being 83% of the population married to less than 20? How do you have community? You remember when you had community, even the mother wasn't there, the father was there, you had an uncle, you had an aunt, you had a grandmother. You can't have that, you can't produce that over and over again without family. So these are the things that we dealing with. And then when we had Peaceaholics, one of the things that I did with my partner at the time, where we fought the system for what we believed in. Like a lot of these people would just take the money and walk away. No, if this is what we believe is going to take the work, we're going to fight for what we put in our proposal. So one of the biggest things that we fought for that was so important in dealing with violence was the case management. So normally with these grants and these programs, the case management for a child is 25 to 1 or better. So for these children who are out here committing intensive and very, very serious crimes, ours was 5 to 1. So our case manager was like a surrogate parent to these children who out here commit the crimes that we're seeing now. Because they were doing it then, just wasn't as many. So we were able to change a lot of lives because we had surrogate parents as a part of what we did. Then the other thing is, everybody who worked for us didn't have to be a returned citizen, even though they were a core group of our work, right? But one of the things that I learned from doing the work with civil rights leaders was the power of women. And my grandmother too, who raised me for predominantly the most of my life. She was a powerful black woman. And I was around a lot of powerful black women, so I understood their power. And during the civil rights movement, when all the guys were getting beat by the racist people, Bull Connor and all his crew, it was the females who were able to convince the guys not to retaliate. But if those guys would have retaliated, that would have gave them the justification to kill us all and do what they were trying to do. But because they made us restrain, convinced us to restrain, we made them look like the devil throughout the world. And that's how that whole thing flipped. So studying that, you know, and going down there and doing the civil rights tours we were doing, taking hundreds and hundreds of young people that were court adjudicated, who went down there as enemies a lot of times, came back hugging and crying after they went on those civil rights tours. Those are the type of things that, you know, that I use and implemented in the work that I did. And then we also use go-go music. So, you know, until the last, I would say, 10 years, and this was another thing, you talked about music. They took music out of schools and then they shut down all the clubs for young people in DC. What did that do? Before they did this, go-go was more popular than hip-hop in DC. In fact, a hip-hop artist could not close out a show in DC. I don't care who they were. They would close out with a go-go band. So you took like 15 years of, to this day, young people have nowhere to go to hear our music and culture that we grew up on. And they do this throughout the world. In every native city, most places, the natives cannot play their music. If you go to Lagos right now, Natalie was telling us about that? The natives in Lagos cannot play their music in clubs there. That's a part of gentrification. That's how they do it. They strip you of your culture. So when they took that away, the young people went to hip hop. See, with go-go, if somebody went too far to the right, we can pull up on them like, dude, you can't do that. You're going too hard. You can't do this in front of the young. Y'all can't do this. You can't do that with hip hop. So when they start doing drill music and all this other stuff, we don't have no control over that. You see what I'm saying? So the music has always been so instrumental in movements and dealing with violence. And now it's been utilized to destroy our people and our communities. Especially when you live in areas where there's no family, where you got a mother, father, uncle, somebody stepping in and say, hey, that's a fairy tale. But you got guys really trying to live out what they listening to in the music, in real life. And see, when we came up, the drug dealers and the streets ran the rappers. Now the streets listen to rappers, and the rappers ain't too tight. The ones we listen to, half of them are broken to pieces. Right, run by corporate or just broken to pieces. Like they've been traumatized, been through so much stuff and never got any help. And they don't know where they're going. They on drugs, they on this, they out their damn mind every time. I'm just keeping it real. So these are the people who are teaching your children. And if nothing's done about that, we get what we get. We get what we get.
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, there's so much power in the music, the message, and what's delivered through it, and the culture around it. And that's what traditionally, when we learn about resistance movements, the music was an important part of that, right?
Don't you DC?
And that's still true today, right? Yeah. So just out of curiosity, you talk a lot about history. Who has been one of your most influential historical figures, and why?
That's hard. I start with my cousin. I found out maybe 15 years ago that Malcolm X was my cousin. And one of the most profound, my grandmother was illiterate. One of the most profound things that he said was, there's no difference between a conservative and a liberal. He said, a liberal is just a sheep, a wolf with sheep clothing on. And with me, I'm from the streets. So I could deal better with somebody who is either my enemy or who don't like me or whatever than somebody who act like they my friend. And really, they don't give a damn about me. Because that's a person who get in the backseat of my car and blow my brains out. If I'm scared of you, or if I'm not sure about you, you're going to sit next to me. I got my gun on you, you got your gun on me. So that means I'm not going to die. But when you got people who say they care about you, but every time somebody black try to help a black person, you make it criminal. But then you want to come to me with all your little pet peeve projects. They ain't going to do nothing to give my people equity. All it's going to do is say you did something for me. See, I remember Sankofa having a fight to stay open. I remember black people coming together and saying, no, y'all going to deal with this tax stuff and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Why we always got to fight? Right? And then you got people who will say, oh, Amazon is bad. Amazon is horrible, right? But let me explain how none of this stuff is no different than nothing else. Most of the big white nonprofits in Washington, D.C. started right here uptown. They grew. Most of them did a decent job. They expanded, they bought property, and what did they do after that? They sold it, and where did they go? Went to Ward 8. What did they do in Ward 8? Bought property, they built, and they started working in Ward 8. Then what happens after that? Then the little nonprofits that was there when nobody wanted to be there, they start what? Losing their contracts. Then what the big nonprofits do? Hey, come work for me. Right? Is that any different than Amazon? See what I'm saying? See, I study this stuff. And God gives me the power to study and analyze. So I don't have no picks. And I'm not calling them bad people. I'm not calling Amazon bad. This is a capitalist society. I believe in teaching my people how to deal with a system that's set up to oppress them. And you ain't going to deal with it with somebody keep giving you crumbs. You feel what I'm saying? We really need equity. We got to fight for it. And we got over $20 billion budget in Washington, D.C. There's no reason why 47% of the population can't get their share. And every time I've seen a black man or woman get a big share of it, it's always criminalized. It's always questioned. And the other people come here who have no synergy in the community, right? Most of the time, they haven't invested nothing in it, and they come to get the money, nobody say nothing. So it was just a disparities report done that was summoned by King McDuffie, and the mayor recently put out, and it shows that the disparities in Washington, D.C. are the worst in the world. Well, in America, pretty much. So nobody should say anything about a person of color getting something. But part of the problem comes in where they taught the self-hate. And when so few of you get something, it's like when you got some pigeons or birds outside, you throw a piece of bread out there, they all fight over that little crumb. And they don't really mean no harm, but all of them trying to eat. So we all fighting over crumbs, trying to destroy each other while they sit back and laugh. So we got to teach people this stuff, teach people where the resources is, and advocate for everybody who's worthy, who fights, who really about the people, to get something and build it up. I had one of the young people who was in my program, LGBT young person, transgender, and her mother died, and they told Trey, our friend said, don't get rid of your voucher. I said, get rid of that damn voucher. You're not gonna stay on welfare the rest of your life. I talk straight, I don't do all that little sucker stuff. I talk to people the way they just need to be, because that's the only way they hear. All that little passive BS, that ain't gonna work most of the time. You gotta talk to them so they can hear you. Got rid of that voucher, got in the program that HUD had that gives you dollar for dollar in escrow for whatever you paying in your rent, most times like $500, whatever. And then enrolled in the HPAC program and walked in the house with $100,000 in Ward 7, a $450,000 house, right? But everybody, because this system is set, oh, don't give it that voucher. So our people are scared to even try to do what's right. You see what I'm saying? That's a taught mentality that we got to erase. Because you got all these people not understanding that the world is global now. And things are changing. And if you don't get it now, it might not be here later. And we got to think about our children. We got to start, teaching them how to build for the future, how to connect with Africa, how to connect with the people around the world now, because it's a different world. And we're not learning that in school. Most of the time, by the time black people find out about how things work, it's too late. Or we don't believe, we think it's crime. Don't forget, my friend Sinclair Skinner, he started this movement called I Love Black People. It's a blockchain type of company, organization that does stuff here in Africa. And he came to me about that Bitcoin stuff way before it took off. And I thought he was the craziest person in the world. And I'm guilty. Like a lot of times stuff come to us that makes a lot of sense, but because we're not exposed or taught, we think it's crazy. Sinclair made a lot of money. He's one of the few that made a lot of money. And he's in like Africa, working on decolonizing Africa through Bitcoin. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, like, it's about knowledge. Because if I would have understood that something like that was possible, just like I understood about the property situation, I would have understood the Bitcoin. So we got to educate our young people, our communities about equity, about wealth, about building, about doing the susus that our ancestors did, where everybody put the money in a pot and we invest with each other and we help this person get out, then you next, then I'm next, then you know, we got to teach them about that because right now we don't even trust each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's the mental binds, right? And trying to break that through education. So can you talked about Nigeria a few times and you talked about decolonization of Africa. And so can you talk more about that? Your work stretches outside of DC, obviously. You very much are an advocate for DC and you connect with other countries and other Black people around the world. Why do you think it's important to connect with other struggles around the world or just other experiences as well?
Well, Black is global. And we've been separated, but now people are connecting again. That's one good thing about the internet. People are connecting. And this is the one time in history where people are standing up and saying, you know what? You my brother. You my sister. You know, I went to Belize like 10 times because when I went there, it was people who looked just like me. The drum. My friend Shine was over there, you know, elevating in politics. And I just saw, I said, wow, these people really love us. They admire us, but they still got their culture. They still know their history, they know who they are. So when you get with other Black people who know who they are, where they come from, and they're not gonna let the colonizer take that away from them. Like when the king of England went over there, they gave him the blues when he came to Belize. They didn't treat him like he was a king. They basically gave him their ass to kiss because we ain't forgot what you did to us. So don't come over here acting like you love us. So you got people like that might not have all the money, but they understand who they are, right? And when you connect with people like that and they teach us and we teach them and we start getting the economics going again, the global economics, then that's power. The other thing is that those people humble you and teach you that money's not everything. Because when I go there, I don't go live rich. I live like an average person there and I have fun and it's like, it's different. But when you come here, you start thinking that everything is about the money because that's what we're taught. Even though, like I want to be rich, but I want to be rich so I can leave something behind to my children so they don't have to work as hard as I work. And that's not a crime, but we're taught that's a crime. So we supposed to, you know, we supposed to have our heaven when we go up there, but have hell on earth. But everybody else said they heaven on earth. I don't believe in that. You go talk that to somebody else, right? But I do believe when you bring Black people together who have a moral compass, right? I understand that we all brothers and sisters. Then we can build off of that, and now is the time. You had times before when people like Marcus Garvey and other people tried to do it, but they criminalized them. It was so few of them, but now so many people doing it, you can't just criminalize it. I always tell people, you know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I was like, how did COVID come and everybody start going to Ghana? How did that happen? Like, you know, it didn't seem like it came at the wrong time because everybody was talking about going back to Africa. Then COVID shut everything down, right? But I think that's important. Then the other thing is I think it's important for it to happen because you can't expect other people to love you if you don't show that you love each other. We got to start showing other people that we love each other. If we keep on letting people motivate us over small stuff to go against each other, tear each other down, not learn how to have conversations, not learn how to disagree. Because I don't believe that it's good to always be around people that agree with you. I think good friction makes diamonds. You can't make diamonds off of coal that has no friction. It has to be some friction for anything to be great, right? You have to go through something to be great, right? And that's what we need right now. That's what we need right now. It's so funny. You got these people talking about no parties, no titles and stuff. I've been saying that. Like, you gotta just have good people connect with your people, white people. Listen, in studying under people who work with Martin Luther King, one of the things that they taught me was you're going to have some good white people, and you're not going to get this done without them. And they say it was a lot of white people behind the scenes who were good, who helped them. So I learned from my work, like when I was dealing with checking, it was crazy. I'm a straight black man, and I'm thinking, oh, I help with these gay children. Gay people stick together. They gonna help me with them. Shit, they ain't help me because they were so vile. They didn't want to be associated with them. It was a white Republican, Jack Kemp's son, Jimmy Kemp, who helped me with checking. When I couldn't pay the rent in that building, Jimmy was giving me the money. Sometimes I had to pay him back. Sometimes say, I'm good, Mo. We good right now. That was a white man, right? And our relationship came organic. I went in the White House 4 times under Donald Trump. People like, you going in Donald? Hell yeah. I ain't never getting in Obama. So, but you know what I was going in there with? The First Step Act. My friend Jerron Smith, who did the bill that's brought all these brothers home from prison, that's what he was working on. He was the highest ranking black official in the White House. So if I listen to dum-dums who tell you, oh, don't go in there. What? Nobody ever taught you gotta make sure you're at the table? Because who gonna speak up for your people? I never forget the day that Donald Trump, after he won and they had this big meeting with all the black Republicans in the Trump Tower, his new hotel. And I went in there and got to the table with all these black guys, so I know they'll never come in the community. And I told them about themselves. I told them a little something. And then I left. You know what I'm saying? I was happy to be at the table, but I let them know, y'all need to, don't just talk at this table. Come in the community, really deal with the people. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people tell you don't go to that table. I don't let nobody tell me what table to go to. I don't let nobody tell me who my friends are. Because I know for a fact, if you explore, you'll find good people everywhere. And that's why this country is so polarized. We let people tell us, either you're on this side or you're on that side. And we never get to a middle ground that makes sense. And I give you another example. I talk about criminal justice, and y'all heard about the mayor's bill. A lot of people say, oh, that's too tough. Huh? It's too tough for us to tell a young guy who just carjacked somebody, oh, I'm gonna sit you down for a minute. Let me do an assessment on you to see why you carjacking people. Are you carjacking people because you ain't got no food in the refrigerator? Are you doing it because you got wannabe syndrome? Or are you doing it because you're just a badass child that need to do some time? But we can't figure it out if we don't do an assessment. And you can't do an assessment in 6 hours. And that's what we let these progressive people who don't know a damn thing. I'm not talking about all progressive. Actually, they're not progressive, regressives, right? Because they've taken us back. Because we went from one extreme that we didn't need, which was mass incarceration that destroyed the black community, to another extreme where we say, let's let anybody out no matter what they do. Both of them are counterproductive. Both of them are counterproductive. Guess what you're doing? You setting that child up to think that no matter what he do, there's no accountability. So then when he turns 18 and he gets that charge of 20, 30 years, like the little 22-year-old guy who killed that man in Maryland, came and killed the people dogs, then came and carjacked a woman in D.C., that dude ain't never coming home. And because I've been in the system and I've been working with young people, I'm not somebody who read a damn book and then trying to tell somebody what they need to do. I know enough people that told me that's locked up with 20 and 30 years that I wish somebody would have slowed me down. Just for a minute. So I had some time to think about what I was doing. Because now I ain't gonna never see the streets again. And all those people who were making money off of being so-called advocates for me, they don't call me anymore. They don't send me any money. They don't make sure my mom all right. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes you gotta listen to people who got a little common sense, because most of this stuff is common sense. This is not rocket science. You can't have a guy that get caught with machine guns twice and let him right back on the street. This is what we had going on in DC, y'all. Y'all, do you think that makes sense?
No.
But you had people that said we have a crime problem. Now, we know that there are root causes to that young person being like that, but that still don't give them an excuse to go out and kill people. So now we pull him in, and then it's our job to make sure he has what I had when I went in. See, when I went in, there was real programs. Like I said, I got my high school diploma in prison. I went to college in prison. It was really set up for a person who wanted to help themselves to really get better. But you get a young person locked up in D.C. and they over the youth center on a damn iPad doing trap music, drill music rather. What the hell is that? So when they go in, we got to make sure they're getting the services and stop all this little poor little black children. So we don't want that. We want to set a bar, and we want to put things in place that elevate them and help them to use their talents the right way. And sometimes love got to be tough. Period. Now we can sit around and keep on acting like, okay, keep on doing it. I never forget my child. I go to town. He steals my car. I get back home and my rim is cracked. I'm like, how the hell that happened? I don't know. Huh? So I knew he stole my car. He got the ass whooping that he never, like Kingdom Come. Right? That's the only time I put my hands on my son. That never happened again. And then one time I had to go to the school where he was acting like a damn class clown. He went to Baloo Senior High School, by the way. When I was dragged through that hallway by his big ass ears in front of his peers, I said, if you want to be a clown, I'm going to treat you like one. Never had a problem out again in school. Never. Never. But some will call that abuse. I don't think that's abuse. If I'm paying your bills and you in my household, you're not going to make my name trash. And I'm not going to be out here helping other people's children, telling them what to do, and my child here acting like a damn fool. I'm not tolerating it. And then after that, the last time he got in trouble, I'll tell y'all what happened. And this was it. Never had a problem out of him again. I told him don't go down Chinatown. He went down there anyway. Because there was a lot going on. It was just crazy down there, gallery place. So he calls me, Dad, I'm locked up. I said, locked up for what happened? I was down gallery place. Some weed was on the ground. The police gave me the charge. I said, okay. Can you pass a urine test? I don't know. I said, oh, that's your shit. So then he started bugging, talking tough and all that. I said, oh, okay. I said, what? I told him, I said, keep him with you. So I think at that time, Sasha Bruce, like they had picked the children up, take them home and all that. So they tried to bring him to my house. I said, he ain't coming here. Because he kept, I gave him another chance to get it right. He still ain't want to play all tough. So I go to court and he's still talking. But, boys go through that sometimes. That's what they do. So, I told the judge, keep him. Y'all keep him. They put him in a group home for a week. I brought him his little outfits. Oh, you can't have your headphones. You only have this many underwear, this many pants. 1 week. Dad, I apologize. I was wrong. I never had a problem out of him again. And that's what I'm trying to tell you. We let a system tell us how to raise our children. The problem, all these boys being raised by women. And the mother has a role because the mother is more compassionate. She has a job to be that person, but it's about balance. The father come with the other piece. And most of these young boys never had a man telling them what to do. So then when a man come to them, whether it's on the streets or any kind of way, they feel some kind of way and they respond the way they feel about their father or the way they've been taught to feel about their father. They respond to that with anger. They respond to the system with anger. And nobody wants to acknowledge that. Nobody. But it's real. You got all these unbalanced children, and these boys been raised a lot of times by women who are great, who do a great job. But I raised 2 of my children right now by myself. but there's some things they need from a woman too. So no child is not going to suffer from not having that balance. You can do a great job, but it's still going to be something missing. And we've been taught that sounds crazy. I've had somebody I respect to say, Ron, I think the father thing is a little bit overplayed. I said, really? You really think that? And it's somebody who I really respect and thought was real bright. But yeah, I think that's really overplayed. I said, really? Okay. Like, you know what I'm saying? But you got some people who really think that.
All right, so I mean, Mo said a lot, and I just don't know. Do you all have any questions? We'll take some from the audience too. Want to keep this as a conversation. A man here in the blue.
My name Kennard Johnson. I'm a returned citizen. That's the term they use. I'm a career offender too. Went to Lawton, couldn't read, and eventually got a bachelor's degree from Goucher College, PWI in Maryland. With Brother Ron, some of the stuff, I think you've been out for a while. The system, it would work if the pieces were in place. Like you went through when they believed in so-called quote-unquote rehabilitation. In the feds, it's, and Wes Moore wrote about it out in Maryland. He said that governors build prison space based on your third grade math scores.
Sure did.
So, and that's not about rehabilitation when you do that. That's warehouse. In the federal system now, that's what they do. You know, I was there when Clinton took the Pell Grant. I was in college when he took it. And I was in Jessup that gave the speech when Loretta Lynch came to Jessup and we got the Pell Grant back 30-some years later. So the point I'm making, I agree with you most of the way, but when that person, you said that mass incarceration went too far, the pendulum swung, we know that I call it hyper incarceration because mass would mean all of society was black and brown. But when they get locked up, the other piece is not there. That's the warehouse. So people do time angry. They do a lot of time confined in cells because the system can't manage. So they got to lock them in. They call it modified lockdowns now. You know, it's just lockdowns. I've been under it. You lock down for COVID and it's indefinite. You know, so until we in D.C., because all our people are farmed out to the federal system, to some white folks up in the mountains.
Because black people in D.C. said they didn't want to build a prison in Blue Plains. Black people.
Well,
So
I mean,
I'm
not disputing that. Yeah. I was here when we had Operation Clean Sweep. I was born in D.C., went to Bruce Monroe. Black people, James Foreman wrote about locking up our home. So I'm not saying our hands are clean. I know we played a part in it. But I'm saying if we don't make enough noise to get the BOP, who
I agree,
completely ignore Washington politicians, we send all our people there to be warehouse. You can't get a trade in the Fed. You might get a GED. You can't work on no computers because that's a security threat, except for these little true links that barely got any features to teach you how to use Word, Excel, or PowerPoint. So the rehabilitation piece that you're talking about, what I'm afraid of when we bring that hammer down, because I believe in the hammer too, when we bring it down again, the second part is not going to be there.
Let me say this. So when I talk about the hammer, I'm talking about people out here putting guns in people's heads. And you can't let somebody put a gun to somebody's head and don't sit their ass down and talk to them. And I'm not saying they got to be gone for years. They let them out the same night. That don't make no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And violent people normally have been traumatized. If you don't have things in place to fix that, I'm talking about young people. In D.C., we have control over the system with our young people. In D.C., they spent millions and millions of dollars right down here in Maryland and Mount Olive Road. Beautiful facilities. They got time. They can't even spend all the money they had over there for them, right? So what I'm saying is we can fix that. We can put programs in there. Now it's up to us to say what we want done with our money. See, I got tired of talking to people who wouldn't listen. I told them we did the criminal justice reform. I was there. I was one of the people who fought for it. I was one of the people who came together with Cornell Jones, Django Sawyer, and all those. We came up with the name Returned Citizens. Now it's used all over the world and got the city council to embrace it. So I'm with all that. But if you talk to Cornell, he's going to tell you the same thing I'm telling you. Sit their ass down before it's too late. Because if you let somebody think that there are no consequences for actions like that, they become the worst criminals as adults. And I'm not saying that they got to do a lot of time. What I'm saying is some people, it's a small percentage. I'm not talking about mass incarceration because it's a small group of people in our city causing all this stuff we see. But now it's becoming contagious, and you got little corny children out here robbing people. Y'all see the people robbing people, and then people say, "No, you ain't robbing me." They go, "Oh my God!" And then they running back to the car. You know those ain't no street youngins. Those youngins that's following what they see, following what's in the music. And right now, the coolest guy on the block is the guy with the biggest gun. And it's cool to be a damn fool right now. Because guess what? When we came up and I was doing the work in D.C. like in 2002, every school in D.C. had an after-school program for the young people. The police was in the schools with the boys' clubs. We had somewhere, they had to pick the children out of Ballou. One incident happened. J-Rock got killed in the Ballou, and then they took all the after-school programs out. So where did the young people go? They went to the streets. And to this day, we got all these pretty buildings, multi-million-dollar schools, but are the children in them when the schools let out? No. Are we having the fashion shows we used to have, y'all? Are we having the spelling bees we used to have? Are we having the go-go's in the schools that we used to have to motivate the children to do what's right so they can go to the events? All that stuff was taken away from them. So they created their own platforms. They created their own way to have fun without any guidance. And now we got what we got. And everybody acting like they don't know how we got here. But with that being said, I just know too many situations where I know exactly what a young person was doing. And I try to keep working with them, say, "Oh, he ain't ready yet. Let's keep working with him. He almost there." And they push them out just to say they got the numbers down. So then they go to the next city, do the same. The same dude who did that in D.C. got the job in Baltimore. Right? So y'all watch what get ready to happen in Baltimore. Watch what I tell you. Remember, I told you, I be telling people stuff, it always come true. This watch what I tell you. The same guy is running Baltimore. Same guy. And they make them superheroes. Just imagine if a white guy took a gang of 200 people, a gay gang that was down Gallery Place, with no government funding, stopped it. I'd be a superstar right now. I would have been on every talk show and everything. I did without any money from the city. Out of love. Because guess what? There was a lot of gay people in my life that helped me. W. Roundtree, one of the top civil rights lawyers that ever exist. When I was a child, I used to be over her house. That's family. Her and Willie Haywood, they were family. They helped me. You know what I'm saying? My uncle, David Moten, ran the clubhouse, was one of the runners of the clubhouse club up on Upshur Street. He helped me. So I did the same thing and did something that's unheard of. And Steve Buscemi did a documentary on it. I mean, I traveled the world with it, but I'm just saying, we didn't get the support we should have got because I was a black man. I was a black, straight man who just did what God told me to do, right? And that's what I always do. I do what God tells me to do. I don't listen to what people tell me to do. And normally God guides me the right way. And normally when I don't listen to what God tells me to do, and that's back to the civil rights, I get the mic back to you. Amelia Morton Robinson, lady I told you about, one of the biggest things I got from her that I listened to her, she said, when you hear that voice in your head telling you what to do, listen. It's God telling you what to do. When you hear those whispers, listen. And every single time I don't listen, I regret it. So I learned to listen. Not to man, not to woman. I listen to my inner spirit because I get guided by that. And that's what has guided me to do everything, every move, every mistake that I made sometimes. But those mistakes made me who I was. I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't go through what I went through. So I don't take a mistake as the worst thing in the world. And that's why I say with the young people who go through things, it's not that you're a devil. It's just that you got to learn from your mistakes. And you got to understand the time that we living in today.
Another question.
Just really quick, you talked about the difference between a snitch and a citizen, but I want to understand what a citizen is.
Okay.
So let's talk.
So what I teach people is, a lot of people get caught up on citizenship, like with immigrants and all. I'm not even talking about that. So a citizen is somebody who resides in the community, who lives there, and they understand their rights, right? They understand that the government works for them. They understand that this is their community, and they are part of what happens, right? They know if crime happens in their community, they should try to stop it. But if they can't stop it, then they have the right to call the police. And the police work for them too. So the police shouldn't come there and terrorize their community. Police come there and respect them just like they respect the people up on the Gold Coast when they come there, right? A resident is somebody who resides in the neighborhood and let other people make decisions for them. So it's a big difference between a citizen and a resident. And when people don't understand their rights as a citizen versus somebody who just resides and let other people make decisions for them and then always bitch and cry when things don't go their way. And a snitch is somebody, like I said, a person who commits a crime, out here doing what's wrong, and then when they get locked up, they go tell on everybody to get off. They go tell on people. That's a snitch. And a lot of people have been bamboozled in our community to think that citizenship is snitching. So now we got to live in chaos in our community because our right to live in a society that is humane has been eaten up by this garbage that our children are getting on social media and in this dumbass music they producing now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mo. Thanks for the questions and comments. Any other questions and comments from Mo? Yeah, and you mentioned the difference between snitching. He talks about that in the book. So another plug for the book, Don't Mute Moe. There are copies available in the back, so please get your copy. And go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing, we're doing a big youth summit. We're doing a big youth summit on August the 13th with youngins from D.C., Maryland, New York, Baltimore, and Philly. And one of the things that we're working on is connecting young people. It's called SMART: sports, music, arts, recreation, and technology. All these things, you have people working with our young people or connecting to our young people, and most of the time they're doing it for free, right? But we got to take and capitalize off of those relationships because, for instance, coaches are the only people that I know that have no problem bringing youngsters from different neighborhoods together who normally wouldn't be in the same car, the same bus, the same field, right? But what do we do to capitalize off of that past the football field, past the basketball, past the soccer, past the track, right? We got to utilize those relationships the same way that competent parents do with Jack and Jill. They put their children in these programs and they get their children to grow and learn from each other and expose things through these programs. So we got to take and train coaches because some of them don't got it all, but they're good, but they just need a little training. Some of them work the damn job, right? But we got to train the coaches because they got something valuable, and then the coaches who got it and incentivize them and give them the resources to take it past football, basketball, the arts, the music, the studios, all those people, the people who build them platforms. So, and we got to give young people and incentivize something to be incentivized for doing the right things. It's part our fault that they doing what they doing. So we got to change the narrative, and I did it with the Pieceaholics. We made it cool for youngins to do the right thing. It was cool. I'll never forget, it was one guy who was from down Hobart Street, and he was a shooter. And he was down Roosevelt doing mediation. I'll never forget, he came and showed her the paperwork, because we had him doing reports and everything, peer mentor. Hey, I just mediated a joint with the MS-13. Youngin. But he was thorough, they respected him. So what I'm saying is, those are the type of things that these young people really want, but we got to make it so that it's cool to do that. And we got this thing called the Street Commission. So we went and got all the shooters from the different neighborhoods and put the ones we could put together initially, and then later we were able to bring all of them together. And they started squashing the beefs without us even being there. They were coming to us after they did it, telling us about what happened. They stopped calling us, and that's what it's supposed to be about. If we gotta be in somebody's neighborhood forever, it's just a hustle. If we building people up to be the peacemakers and the people who control and run the community, then it's not a hustle. And guess what? You should be able to get paid whatever you deserve in doing that, because you're a specialist. And that's what we did. I had people that worked for me who were like on the 8th grade reading level, but they can go get them youngest. He made $80,000 a year. I had people with degrees couldn't get 10 of them. So we pay people based upon their effectiveness, not titles. And then we match them, like say like a guy couldn't write well, because a lot of people don't like to do reports, but they can get on their phone and do voice notes. And we had people, women, who would be in the office, and every Friday would take the voice notes and they would do their reports. See what I'm saying? So we had a system that capitalized off of people's strengths. And then we understood that women, the power that they had. So if naturally, if a boy, all he had is a man in his life, a woman in his life, I need a woman to stamp me. So a lot of times those boys will go to the woman, I ain't doing, nah, you need to go talk to him. Da, 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 da. They will stamp me. Same way in the community. If you go on public housing, women run public housing. So, and women are open to things that make sense, don't have the ego that men have. So sometimes, based upon the civil rights movement and what we learned, we will go to the women first when the guys will listen. Then the guys start seeing the women going out of town, going on civil rights tours, oh, y'all don't mess with the dudes, y'all don't help us. The next thing you know, we got the guys. So all this stuff is strategic. It's about studying history. Don't nothing change. Everything is just over and over again. You just add something to it. You know what I'm saying? So those are things that I would definitely tell people. If you read the book, you'll hear about a lot of that in the book. I got another book called Drinking Muddy Water. That was my first book I wrote, 12 years ago. And it's 300 pages. I actually sold it here too, sold out here. And basically, it has a lot of knowledge in there too. You might not agree with everything. I was a bad man when I wrote that damn book. I got a lot of stuff out my system, man. That's not the whole DC government attacked me, trying to tear me down. That was crazy. But it's a good book. It's a good book. I think you should read that one too. It's definitely something about the history of DC, people, lessons learned. You'll like that one too.
Thank you, Mo. And Mo ends his book just talking about the hearts of the matter. And thank you, Mo, for just throughout this session sharing your heart and your passion with us, and continuing to share your heart and your passion with the DC community and all that you do. So thank you. I feel truly honored to work with you and to just be sitting here with you too. So thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who have joined in person and online today. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. We're doing it at on Mississippi Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah, we